In Rome's young heart, where Tiber's waters glide, a threat loomed large, with war's unyielding tide. The Etruscans, led by King Lars Porsena, marched on the fledgling republic, their blades agleam with the desire to restore the exiled tyrant, Tarquinius Superbus, to his throne. Their armies camped just beyond the Tiber River, and only one crossing stood between them and the city. The Pons Sublicius, a simple wooden bridge. As panic gripped the Roman Forum and citizens debated their grim chances, one man stepped forward. His name was Publius Horatius Cocles, and on that bridge his stand would weave a legend for the ages. The Senate was in chaos. Senators and citizens alike feared the worst. The Etruscan horde was vast, their warriors seasoned, while Rome's own legions were outnumbered and unprepared. Amidst the despair, Horatius Cocles, a seasoned warrior with a gaze as steady as stone, addressed the panicked assembly. "Enough despair!" he boomed, his voice cutting through the noise. "Rome's spirit shall not bend. The Sublician Bridge is our city's only gate. Give me 2 men to stand with me, and we will hold that pass, while you cut it down behind us." His words, bold and unwavering, were met with stunned silence. Then, a rising murmur of hope. 2 brave soldiers, Spurius Lartius and Titus Herminius, stepped forward, their swords drawn in salute. "We are with you, Horatius," they declared. "Let Porsena come. Our blades will carve his doom." As the 3 heroes marched toward the bridge, the Roman engineers gathered their axes, ready to begin their desperate work. Horatius's sister, Valeria, watched them go, her heart a mixture of pride and terror. She knelt, praying to Mars, the god of war, and Tiberinus, the god of the river, to shield her brother and preserve the city he vowed to defend. Meanwhile, in the Etruscan camp, King Porsena conferred with the vengeful Tarquinius. "The bridge is all that bars our way," Porsena declared confidently. "By dawn, Rome will kneel." Tarquin, his face twisted with bitterness, urged him on. "They say a man named Horatius guards the gate. Crush him, and the city is yours." Porsena scoffed at the idea. 1 man against his thousands? It was a jest. He gave the order to advance, and the ground trembled as the Etruscan army moved toward the river, their war horns echoing the promise of Roman blood. At the narrow entrance of the Sublician Bridge, Horatius, Lartius, and Herminius took their stand. They formed a wall of bronze and steel, their shields locked together, their spears pointing toward the approaching enemy. "Here we stand, my brothers," Horatius declared, "Rome's final shield. No Etruscan boot shall cross this field." The first wave of Etruscans charged, expecting to sweep the 3 defenders aside in a single rush. But the Romans held. Swords clashed, shields splintered, and the narrowness of the bridge turned the Etruscans' numbers into a disadvantage. Horatius, a giant of a man, fought like a cornered lion, his blade a blur of motion. Lartius and Herminius, inspired by his ferocity, matched him blow for blow. Wave after wave of elite Etruscan warriors crashed against their small phalanx, only to be broken and thrown back. The Etruscan captain, astonished by their resistance, shouted, "Yield, Romans! Your stand is brave but vain." Horatius roared back, his voice filled with defiance. "Yield! I am Horatius, Rome's own son. This bridge I'll hold till the Tiber is won." Behind them, the rhythmic chop of Roman axes biting into the bridge's wooden supports provided a grim soundtrack to the battle. The Etruscans, shamed and enraged by their failure to break 3 men, regrouped for another, more ferocious assault. Arrows rained down, and spears were hurled with deadly intent. Spurius Lartius took an arrow to the shoulder, and Titus Herminius was wounded in the leg. But still, they fought on, protected by the indomitable presence of Horatius. The pile of fallen Etruscan warriors grew at their feet, forming a gruesome barricade. As the fight raged, the bridge began to tremble and groan. The Roman engineers shouted from the far bank, their work nearly complete. "Horatius, the supports are failing!" Titus yelled, parrying a desperate spear thrust. "We must fall back now!" Horatius glanced over his shoulder. He saw the structure sagging, the planks splintering. He knew his comrades, wounded and exhausted, had given all they could. "Go," he commanded. "Retreat across the last few feet. Tell the Senate that Horatius held his post." Lartius and Herminius hesitated, unwilling to leave their commander, but his order was absolute. Limping and bleeding, they staggered back across the swaying bridge, leaving Horatius to face the Etruscan army alone. One man, one blade, against a sea of spears. For a moment, even the Etruscans paused, awestruck by the lone figure who dared to defy an entire army. But the pause was fleeting. Enraged, they surged forward again, determined to overwhelm the solitary hero. Horatius, now a lone bastion of Roman valor, met them with a fury that seemed almost divine. He ducked, weaved, and spun, his sword a whirlwind of death, felling opponent after opponent. Just as the Etruscans were about to finally overwhelm him, a tremendous crack echoed across the river. The bridge, its supports finally severed, began to collapse. "Horatius, jump!" the Romans screamed from their bank. With a final defiant look at the enemy, Horatius raised his sword to the gods. Then, as the wooden structure gave way beneath him, he leaped backward, fully armored, into the churning waters of the Tiber. The bridge crashed into the river with a thunderous roar, sending a spray of water and splinters high into the air. The Etruscan army halted at the river's edge, their path to Rome gone. They stared in disbelief as Horatius, burdened by his armor and wounds, fought against the strong current. King Porsena himself walked to the bank, his expression one of pure astonishment. "By the gods," he murmured to his officers, "what valor! Rome breeds men of flame." He watched as the Romans on the far shore cheered, their voices echoing across the water. Horatius, aided by the river god Tiberinus himself, according to the legend, struggled toward the Roman bank. He was pulled from the water, exhausted and bleeding, but alive. Porsena, deeply moved by this incredible act of courage, lowered his sword. The sight of such selfless heroism had shaken his resolve to conquer a city that could produce such a man. Though the war was not over, the assault on Rome was, for that day, denied. Horatius was carried back to the city not just as a soldier, but as a living symbol of Roman virtue. He was hailed as the savior of the Republic. In the Forum, the Senate offered him any reward he desired: gold, high office, or as much land as he could plow in a single day. Horatius, ever the humble servant of the state, asked for nothing for himself. He requested only that his story be carved in stone, so that future generations of Romans would remember what was required to keep their city free. His stand at the bridge became a cornerstone of Roman identity, a story told to every child. Thus Horatius held, and Rome stood tall, a hero's stand against the tyrant's call. The Sublician Bridge, though lost to time's decay, lives on in his courage, eternal as the day. Sing, Rome, of Cocles, whose single sword sufficed to guard your future with his sacrifice.